Many thanks, James, for your time and for joining us at the 6th International Food Innovation Conference. Let's talk about the chef and the machine, which obviously is no contradiction to you, is it?
No, it's not at all. I mean, for me, I was very fortunate and completely by chance I've had the opportunity to become the lead chef with IBM in the Chef Watson project, which began 13 years ago, and it was the first generative AI for recipes. I had no idea. I'd never, AI at that time was like in the Terminator movies, and that's all. We had no idea it was becoming a part of everyday life. It really kind of started out as this challenge of, I'm going to go in a kitchen and cook against the computer and see who's better at making a flavorful dish. That really is where it began. And
do you have some kind of a very adventurous mindset? I mean, I imagine lots of chefs would have said, "What? Artificial what?" And no, forget it. I'm doing, my auntie's or grandma's recipes. Forget about it. Why did you join in? Why did it come to you?
So that was when I was at the Institute of Culinary Education in my role as director of culinary development. They came. Actually, one of the programmers, one of the original developers, was just very passionate about food and cooking. Had actually taken weekend courses at the culinary school, and so they had this idea of, this was shortly after Watson had just been on Jeopardy and had won Jeopardy, and so it was first really kind of first public showcase of natural language processing that a computer could actually just take in what was spoken word and reply. So it was, they had proved that a computer, we're still just calling it a computer, that AI could answer any question. Again, I have to keep reminding, because this is all, this was before Siri was living in our phone and we talked to it every day, 13 years ago. So they wanted to see, could that same technology be used to help people be more creative? They wanted to apply it to one of the arts, and they thought about, visual art or music, but those were all a little bit intangible and much more subjective, where the culinary arts were very tangible, and it's something that people could experience and interact with. So they chose to go this route, and then that's how they ended up at the school and meeting with a bunch of chefs, and they interviewed us about our creative process. How do you go about creating a dish? What's the thought process? And the way kind of my brain works, and that helped me win all these cooking competitions on TV. It was very kind of analytical and structural, and they're like, this is the exact structure we're building into this system. So will you, come and help us kind of move this technology, from a computer screen into, actual practicality in a kitchen?
Was there some kind of a revelation, a eureka moment for you when you started, let's say, co-working with Chef Watson?
There was, absolutely, and it was because, again, I went in, I can cook better than a computer. I was like, you can't even, there were no robotics involved, so I was like, of course I'm going to know better. The understanding of flavor and being able to see flavor as data, this was really, really unknown at the time. The flavor pairing theory was just a couple of years, had been around for just a couple of years at this point, and I was completely unaware, uninformed that flavor could be viewed as data and could actually be interpreted and understood by a machine, by a computer system. So this was really kind of the biggest piece for me, that also that this system, that Watson could help us see connections between ingredients that we would never know were there based on. So of course this comes down to the chemical compounds in ingredients, and then on the flavor pairing theory, saying that ingredients that share compounds are more likely to taste good when combined together. So you can start to build predictive models on how good something's going to taste based on the number of shared compounds.
And still you say, if I got you right, there is a difference between generating recipes, making a step forward into the present time, let's say, moving away from Chef Watson, and creating food. You draw a line there, don't you?
Yes, yeah, we do. And with Watson, we said the headline was a computer can create recipes. That wasn't really the most interesting part, nor was it particularly true at the time. Eventually, we linked up with the Bon Appetit database and were able to do some language processing. But it's kind of hard to see here. But what we considered a recipe was this list of ingredients, on a screen, and it would produce literally billions of these ingredient combinations. And those were all inspired by a seed ingredient, a type of dish, and the cuisine style. I know it's kind of messed up on there. And then, through the algorithms, we were able to actually kind of rank these based on pleasantness, the surprise, right? So how this list of ingredients, how commonly did they appear together in recipe databases? Is this a combination, this specific list of ingredients, has they ever been put together in a recipe before? So that was surprise, and then just the pairing, the percentage of shared compounds in it. So, that's not a recipe. That's a list of ingredients. So we can look at, the analytics of what's going on between ingredients, where are the shared compounds, where do these commonalities lie from cuisine type, or what makes them taste good or pleasing together. But we still had to take that list of ingredients into a kitchen and create something with it.
So while, if I get you right, while an AI can actually very well understand the relationship between ingredients, it cannot evaluate a finished dish, a finished meal.
And this is where, where we are now, and it's really a roll of the dice, LLMs, generally the general, AI that most people interact with, the ones that many people go to and ask for a recipe. It's creating linguistic patterns, right? It's taking every recipe that that it has access to, looking at what words appear in those recipes. If duck is the dish, what are the ingredients that appear most commonly with duck? Does it understand if that ingredient is, adding acidity to it? Is it reinforcing the, meaty umami of the duck? Is it playing an acidic contrast? Is it enhancing the natural sweetness of the meat? Is it balancing? It doesn't know what any of those ingredients are doing. It just knows that when it filters down all of the duck recipes, here are the ingredients that, commonly go along. And then when those ingredients appear, here are the steps of cooking that are commonly used. So it's only matching patterns. There's no understanding of flavor or technique or the process that goes into actually creating the recipe.
So you're not worried that some kind of truly advanced AI will sooner or later kick out the chef out of the kitchen?
Sometimes I hope it will, because it's nicer to be home with the kids than in the restaurant kitchen.
You'd be unemployed. You're aware of that.
Yes. But no, I think and I think this is we are kind of at the beginning of this, and I think we have to look at some of these approaches and also just make sure that doesn't happen, because of just that process that I just described. And we've heard a lot of people say it here today. Christine mentioned it in numerous times. Also, when you're doing that linguistic pattern matching, you're taking the average, right? Which ingredients appeared most commonly with duck? All of these exciting, delicious things that happen on the fringe of these connections get lost and get filtered out because they're not recognized. Or these, incredible traditions that are only, paths that are only handwritten or have only been spoken, those don't even exist according to an LLM. So these things could either get lost, or we can develop systems that actually preserve them.
I very unfairly so, I overheard you talking to somebody else during a break, and I think the question was, what color would be your AI outing sticker? And I think I overheard you green, so AI lover, but also yellow. It's complicated.
Yeah.
Please do elaborate.
Well, I think it's exactly to that point that big proponent. Obviously a lover. I was there at the beginning, and continuing to work in it, and very excited by the potential of it. But we have to build these systems the right way and with the right things in mind. Particularly with preserving the humanity in the process. When we talk about food, it's about the most personal. It's the most personal thing that we all do every single day, and it touches so many parts of human life. It's memory, identity, culture, community. There's so much wrapped up that can be wrapped up in a bite of food, and it's something we risk losing. Again, if we let the LLMs just take the average of everything that's out there.
You referred to Christine. Let me do so as well. She mentioned the importance of there is a trend towards human-made, and you saw these signs, no AI involved in whatever. Would you let's say it is the right tool, as you mentioned. You have to do it the right way. You have to pick the right tools and all that. Would you recommend the chef to make it official, make it public that he or she is using AI to create new recipes, to be inspired? Or would you rather refrain from that as it might shy away people?
I think, I think when we do it the right way, it just becomes part of the working process. I put this up here because I think this is one of the best examples and one of the most exciting ways that we use it. This is how we use it, with Chef Watson. So like I said, with Watson, we would give a recipe prompt. So with the ingredients there, you can see Italian roast duck. So the cuisine inspiration is Italian. The dish style was roast. We wanted to be as general and generic as possible. And then duck was the ingredient. So what we've done is we built in these series of constraints into the system that we want to focus the lens on ingredients that are typical to Italian cuisine. We want to kind of gear them towards ingredients that would commonly appear in recipes that are roasted, or are a roast. And then duck is the seed ingredient. So we're basing all the chemical compound matching and the ingredient matching off of the flavors of duck. And it gives us, this wild list of ingredients with fennel, warm spices, apples, sage, tomatoes, red wine, cherries, right? So it's this kind of wild combination of ingredients that if I were making a duck dish, I never would have selected. I would have certainly selected some of those ingredients, not all of them. And then my co-developer, one of my chef partners in this, we take that exact list of ingredients. We can't use any more than those ingredients, and then we go to separate sides of the kitchen and create our dish. And you see the results. Those two completely different dishes. Because we were forced within those constraints, right? We had all of those constraints put upon us, and then it's our personal style, memory, the way we interpret those ingredients gets to shine, and you get forced, and you really become so much more thoughtful about every single ingredient on that list. How am I going to utilize it? How am I going to, make it mix with, with these other ingredients here? So to me, this is a really exciting, and I think a great, showcase of it. So is it important that, that AI kind of selected those ingredients? I don't think so. Because what ultimately shows up on the plate is that chef's individual, personality and point of view and interpretation.
So you might say AI actually can inspire you to think beyond what you learned, let's say, during your chef's education.
I think it can really push you to be more creative, and when we construct it, systems to interact with the right way, that should be the goal. Is that we have this incredible opportunity because I think everyone, even the most experienced chefs, have kind of their habits that you go through, and tomato, basil, immediately mozzarella. You have kind of these easy decisions that make, and that's typically what ChatGPT would give you as well. I want an Italian dish. Well, it's got to have mozzarella, tomato, and basil in it, which is true and delicious. And I love
Briscione,
a caprese, or whatever it may be. But it can be, it can also be so much more interesting is, when we can look at this and say, well, if we're just looking at compounds, in the tomato, you actually have really high incidence of shared compounds with a strawberry. And your sugar acid balance is actually closer to a strawberry. Do we want to consider this and say, okay, now, if we move over to if we connect the tomato to the strawberry, what lanes does that open us up to? And that becomes a very exciting combination, or a way of thinking about creating.
High time to get you, ladies and gentlemen, on board, so we slightly widen the discussion. Any questions? You don't get James Briscione every day to pick his brain about the machine and the chef, the designated CEO of GDI.
James, you're also, I think, if I understood correctly, an instructor at a culinary institute. So my question is, what role does AI play in culinary training and education right now? Are the things that you just talked about, are they being taught at these schools? Do you think they should be taught? So are we going to see sort of a form of AI education and training as part of culinary education in the future?
I put together a whole lot of things here on Slack, so I wasn't sure where the conversations were going to go, but this just happened to be a perfect lead-in to the next slide. And I think something like what we're working to develop at Culinary, I think becomes a really important, can be a really important educational tool as well. So I think again, the most important part is working on how to use it to work alongside the chef, not to think for. Like I said, if what we're trying to build is a system that is step-by-step selective. And I think selection, restraint, judgment is one of the hardest things to teach. AI can generate thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of ideas instantly, just ideas. But at some point, those ideas have to end up on a plate. And, when you get all of these great ideas and you have, all of these incredible ingredients, how do we apply the correct restraint to just get what we want on the plate? As a culinary instructor with students, the biggest thing we had, the hardest thing to learn, and it takes years. They come out of school not knowing how to do this, even though we tried every step, is to know when to stop. When you're creating a recipe, when you're putting a dish together, when is that extra ingredient, that extra sauce, that extra garnish just more? It's not getting better anymore. We're just adding more. And when is the right move actually to take something off the plate rather than adding something to the plate? And so I think, when you can have a system that understands this, and as you're starting to, go down the chain, assembling your ingredients for a dish, and so, this is trending very acidic now. We want to think about, a starch or something sweet that's going to start to balance some of this acidity, or do we want to go one step back, remove this, and think about a different direction? That you can be kind of learning and understanding the processes, and at the same time, what we want is these systems like the biome to learn about you. What is your style? Which way are you going to tend to go? Do you want to, lead with a huge hit of acid on all of your dishes, and then play up sweetness kind of slowly on the back end, or what is the style so that menus have more coherence, and that each time you go through, you're sharpening and becoming a better version of the most thoughtful version of yourself, and you're not at the end of writing the spring menu, I'm just so freaking, exhausted and tired. Just one more thing with asparagus and we're good, and it's spring and we're happy now. How do you stay sharp and always do the best? That was a lot of words, but I hopefully we got the answer in there somewhere.
I think we do. By all means, we do. More questions to James, the chef and the machine. Is this the moment where I say you've been crystal clear so far? I think it is. I think it is. All right. Let me see. I go back to my questions. There we are. I was expecting questions, guys. This is James Briscione. Here we go. So what potential does AI have in, let's say, I think you call it a new R&D kitchen? Is that again, inspiring, offering new lanes of thought, or very practical as well?
Yeah, well, I think in multiple ways. I mean, we also talked about the consumer journey, and AI is going to shape is going to shape what we consume, what we buy, and how we get to those decisions. So what are those priorities going to be? Is it going to be price? Is it going to be taste? And when you're on kind of on the development side as the chef, as the if you're creating product, you have all of these things that you have to kind of consider and factor and balance. And when you need to move decidedly in one of those directions, where do you get that information? How do you focus that information? Pull in more and make better decisions.
You think there will be a time where basically every chef is taking on AI, or will there be, I don't know, source of resistance, saying, I'm not letting AI into my kitchen? Will we have a polarization almost in the culinary sector, using AI and refusing AI?
I mean, I think, again, right, I don't want to speak badly about any specific systems, but, I don't know. There will be. Short answer, there will be, because there will always be, resistance and someone who thinks they're better because they're not using it. But if I had the opportunity to take the 150 cookbooks that are on my shelf, and rather than thinking through and going through and going to the index and finding every single duck dish that's in every one of those recipes I have, reading that recipe, tracking it down in the pages, reading that recipe, kind of thinking about what they did, what little nugget of that one interests me that I want to pull out, and what little nugget of this one interests me that I want to pull out. And I can have that conversation with something that already has all of that information, and it makes that conversation easier for me. Why is that why would that be a bad thing?
Not at all, but I think what again Christine mentioned, that handwritten stuff, grandma's recipe folder, whatever. That obviously, that's her prediction, is going to be lost sooner or later. How do you feel about that as a chef?
Well, and actually last night I got to have an incredible conversation with Sarah at the beginning of the night, and how important some of these projects are, and how the right systems can also play a role in that. If we can, AI can be used to digitize and organize, and then, again, as we're going down those decision paths with a system and say, well, again, we'll just stick with duck to keep it simple. Duck is actually a very important ingredient in this regional cuisine. There, it's typically done in this way. Is that a path you want to go explore? And then you can, and then we go down that road. Do we want to be completely traditional with it? Do we want to make it just the way? And again, that's where it becomes this great educational tool as well. Where I was not familiar with this region of Puglia. There aren't duck in Puglia really. So, but if I wasn't familiar with this particular, region that treats this ingredient this way, and now I have this opportunity to learn about it, and then it sparks something. And for me, often, in this, I'm working through till I hit that one spark, and then close the laptop and get out the notebook and start, and then move into the kitchen and start writing and start creating. So I think the balance, is important. And I think, again, these are these, questions we have to ask. And, is it making us reliant? Or is it making us more capable? Right? And we need to be going towards the more capable part, not the reliant.
Ladies and gentlemen, I do think, having heard so much about duck, that the ducks in the Duty Pond, just about 100 yards from here, are living dangerously tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, the man, the machine, and the chef, James Briscione. Many thanks indeed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.